Do you feel like a man when you push her around? Do you feel better now? Alright. This song, perspective, we're going to answer the question there literally, but overall, if you've heard the entirety of the song, you know this is a male's perspective, questioning a man's masculinity, using the hands meant to protect the person he loved, and instead use those hands to abuse the person he claims to love. So, in the end of the song, with the hopeful, very hopeful proclamation of wishful thinking that eventually she'll be able to say that she has finally had enough. So, the actual question, in a sense of do men feel gratification for putting their hands on women, the answer is pretty much a no-brainer. The answer is yes. Unfortunately, it comes time again. We see there are situations in which somebody can be trapped essentially in their expression, and they don't feel like they have a lot of control over how they regulate their emotions, and as well, therefore, some of their actions as a result of it. But time and time again, we see people who are DV abusers specifically, they are making the conscious choice and do find gratification from doing these acts of abuse. So one of the things that I covered in the last video did touch a little bit on DV, and it was kind of a walking ground up for this one, especially something that wasn't stated in the video and also not pointed out in the comments as well, is the parallel difference between these two artists, in a sense. More specifically, how Ronnie Radke is actually accused of DV. And not only accused, but I believe it was also officially reported. And there has been substantial evidence and claims on it. So it was kind of a little bit of a irony there, in a sense, when you're talking and covering a song, and the singer of the song, the artist of the song, is guilty of some of the layers and points of the very questions being asked within the music. So, but this song specifically is another male's voice challenging the masculinity and duty of male privilege within a relationship, of protecting their partner, but instead abusing their partner. So I thought this would be a great segue, because I am going to be showing a power and control wheel, and it does have male violence, specifically male privilege, on there. And I know people are going to, out of everything else on the wheel, they're going to see that and they're going to have an issue with that. So that's also why I chose specifically the song that I did, and I knew I was actually going to do this song before my first song. So this song was being built up, and I hinted with misogyny in the last video, and kind of cushioning everything so it doesn't seem too overwhelming in everybody's face. So you should have expected by now we would be covering definitely male privilege within DV. So this is a power wheel of control, well, power and control wheel. You have physical violence, sexual violence, and you have all of the different ways in each one. I'm just going to go ahead and go down the list of each and every one. You can find a lot of wheels like this online. I've seen so many. I got this one through a DV shelter. And there's also a bonus wheel on the back called the equality wheel with non-violence. So this one we'll get to as well. And that's a positive, so we'll end on a positive note. But we're going to tackle the serious stuff first. So since I've already mentioned the male privilege, we're going to go and dive into that one first. And then we'll go into clockwork, I guess. Right? So male privilege. Examples of this. It states treating her like a servant, making all the big decisions, acting like the master of the castle, being the one to define men's and women's roles. So this is just some of the very broad examples. There can be a ton of other things here. I also argue as well when it comes to domestic violence with men being the victims, that their roles, especially here, being the one to define men and women's roles. The opposite in this situation is the women defining both the men and the women's roles, and obviously there being a disagreement there that is not working. Obviously, the woman feeling like she is the one in control, she is the master. So there is essentially a female privilege there, but what needs to really be recognized with male privilege is it almost goes hand in hand. It cannot exist without the female privilege, and the female privilege in a way cannot exist without the male privilege. Both can be weaponized in forms of toxic forms of each, positive forms of each, and even a toxic positivity of each of one. But those are the ones that tend to be the most common I see with male privilege role. Well, I'm the man, so you're gonna do this. You need to stay home. You should be taking care of the household. It's a 24/7 job, and you don't get a break. Like, that's a huge one that I see, especially when children are involved. And then we have coercion and threats. So this is where more scary things are happening as well. We have making and or carrying out threats to do something to hurt her, threatening to leave her, commit, or report her to welfare, making her drop charges, and making her do illegal things. So there's so many different things that I have personally seen with people throughout my life where there's just so many things. I've even had boyfriends, I can say, that have threatened to, so I can definitely recognize the mental and emotional abuse behind that. Obviously, these things, at the end of the way, coercing you for anything is not really good at the end of the day. It also really boils down as to why people are doing these things. They don't care about what you want or what you need. They only care about what they want. And that's when things become an issue. Then we have intimidation, which includes making her afraid by using looks, actions, and gestures, smashing things, destroying her property, abusing pets, displaying weapons. Obviously, everything here within pronouns. I was in a DV specifically mostly for women and children, and so that's why these are very gendered here. But realistically, men can be used the exact same way with all of this as well. But yes, I even say the intimidation here, destroying property, as well as specifically when it comes to destroying things like phones, computers, access to the world. I would also say that blurs the line between intimidation and a hostage situation as well. And then we have emotional abuse. We have putting her down, making her feel bad about herself, calling her names, making her think she's crazy, playing mind games, humiliating her, and making her feel guilty. Essentially, anything. What is emotional abuse is the weaponization of anything that you are already feeling it and exploiting it to get you to feel what another person wants to make you feel. Once you get to that point, honestly, stuff like that really scares the crap out of me when people get to the point where they're coercing the way you think, because at that point, I also argue as well, a lot of emotional abuse and mental abuse goes hand in hand. But I feel like mental abuse is also separate in a sense that your mentality is also a huge part of your identity. Your emotional state is emotions, a more temporary state, an ever-changing state. You have an emotional baseline, of course, but I feel that they're still very separate. And I feel especially once you break someone down into the point where they're starting to think in the way that you are breaking them down into thinking, this is a full-blown mental abuse, as you've now completely altered their mental identity. So, and a way to do that coming up is actually a lot of times through isolation as well. So we have controlling what she does, who she sees and she talks to, what she reads and where she goes, limiting her outside involvement, and using jealousy to justify actions. Isolation is also, everyone understands, I feel like, oh, don't be around people who are telling you to stay away from other people. But what happens whenever they're kind of making sense? Well, this is how that isolation begins. An abuser is going to want you to comply as much as possibly can. They don't want you to fight back. They want you to comply. They just want what they want, unless they have a specific mindset where they enjoy the torturing of the process, and then they just don't care and they're going to do whatever no matter what. But whenever you have somebody that's trying to persuade you to adopt a mindset versus trying to force it all onto you at once, they're going to wait for the opportunity to arise for them to almost naturally start to isolate you. You know, maybe you get into a fight with a friend and they'll sit there and they'll say, I would never let my friend even speak to me that way. Like, that is a horrible friend. You should probably just cut them off. Like, and in just that statement alone, I would never allow someone to speak to me that way. A lot of that is purposely languaged that way to make you feel inferior immediately. Like, if you don't uphold this same standard, you are now inferior. So you kind of feel like you have to at that point, even if you don't want to. Like, maybe you do need to take some distance from your friend. Like, maybe they have a point. But what's troubling is when this is continuously happening, obviously, for a lot of people, and when this is also crossing certain boundaries and certain limitations in which it's actually appropriate to have such a response. Another thing I definitely feel at the end of the day, when something happens to somebody, they are the only person that has the right to forgive that person for the actions that they've done to them. And nobody else has the right to impose whether or not they are to be forgiven, essentially. And so I definitely feel like when somebody is so huge into, you shouldn't be around this person, you shouldn't be around this person, I don't want you around this person, I don't want you around this person because of X, Y, and Z. It's definitely important to also understand the why, essentially. Why are they actually doing this? What are they saying? Do they actually realistically have these expectations with their own friends, or are they also kind of not practicing what they're preaching here? Or are they just angry? You gotta understand that as well. And it can be so frustrating and confusing as well, because naturally people don't want to accuse somebody of being wrong and being nasty, especially when they love somebody. And so even our own approaches, usually when we want to confront somebody of their behavior, it's going to be much softer when we love and care for that person versus somebody that is a complete stranger to us, for example. So with that in mind, the next one is minimizing, denying, and blaming, making light of the abuse and not taking her concerns about it seriously, saying the abuse didn't happen, shifting responsibility for abusive behavior, and saying she caused it. So essentially here, what gets weaponized the most, I feel, in this is reactive abuse. So if you're constantly getting yelled at, getting yelled at, getting yelled at, getting yelled at, and then finally you yell back, well, you are being verbally abusive. Factually, yes, but specifically, it's reactive abuse. You're doing this in defense for yourself. That's understandable. That is okay. However, in an abuser's mindset, an abuser wants to ensure and place every single sense of doubt possibly. Our society forgets there's no such thing as the perfect victim. And so when the dehumanization process starts, it usually includes a lot of examples of reactive abuse, which is very unfortunate. Another huge one is when there's children involved. And it's using children, making her feel guilty about the children, using the children to relay messages. I have a family history of something serious with it, and that is insane. Using visitations to harass her and threatening to take away the children. There isn't a whole lot of studies of non-custodial moms being discriminated versus compared to non-custodial fathers being discriminated, but for the few there are in the American studies, it does seem that more specifically, non-custodial mothers are more falsely accused of being crazy and actually being victims of DV than non-custodial fathers end up having false allegations of that DV. So I think that's pretty crazy. And that is also an issue within the family courts. For a very long time, I definitely was a huge follower with like the father rights movement. And the thing is I've seen the shift of attitude throughout years about fathers' rights. And even the most popular pages that you can find on social media, the whole movements without it all, they all do want to recognize non-custodial mothers and other non-custodial type parents, like, legal grandparents have custody of the children, or other guardians, adopted parents, step parents that adopt the children, etc., etc. They all claim that they are also inclusive, but the second you want to bring up how, hey, we don't have all the data yet, but it's actually looking like non-custodial mothers are disproportionately more affected on average than non-custodial fathers due to discrimination in the family courts, they don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that. And that is all down to really their male privilege at the end of the day. So the next one, and the last one on this wheel, is going to be economic abuse. That one is a huge one. There's an insane way I didn't even know you can be financially abused, and I'll get to that. Preventing her from getting or keeping a job, making her ask for money, giving her an allowance, taking her money, and not letting her know about or have access to family income. You should, no matter who you are, you should always have some sort of money in your name. You should always, no matter what, no matter how long you've been married, no matter how long you've been with somebody, does not matter. You should always have money in your name. You should always have access to money. Always. Even if it's not a whole lot, and it is what it is, it's a whole lot. But you should always be able to have the ability to have access to money. One of the ways that people can weaponize and prevent you from getting legal aid is by calling pretty much every single pro bono lawyer, and that services the county. Let's say you're divorcing your husband because your husband put his hands on you. You filed already for the divorce online. You got out very quickly. It was a very fast decision. And now you're deciding that you want to get a lawyer into this. Well, then you start looking for a lawyer. You're putting in your case after case, and you keep finding out that you're not getting any answers, or that they're not accepting. But then you finally get a lawyer that tells you exactly why. It's because they've already got information about your case through the other party. You see, in a lot of these things, in order to prevent, I get the logic behind it, but in order to prevent, a cross of interest, if one party gets to a lawyer first, that lawyer, even if they decide not to take them, is not supposed to take on another party. So, the other party. So, what happens, and this is a form of financial abuse in this case, is it's the other party is calling all these pro bono lawyers, all the more affordable lawyers, and ensuring that this person is not going to be able to get a lawyer. That is, I didn't recognize it until I allege it happened to me. So, I finally got an email back that said that they had already received information from the other party, and the other party had gone through 3 lawyers as well, and I was pro se the entire time because I could not find access to a lawyer. So, and there's not a whole lot you can really do on this. It is also extremely difficult to prove as well. But that unfortunately is a lot of the main things. This doesn't cover even everything, honestly. Like, if we were to actually go through every single little thing here, there's so much more to even cover here. But at the end of the day, again, with all of the her here, I was reading all of this, but all these things apply within every relationship, with men, women with men, men with women, and multiple partners of multiple combinations, right? It doesn't matter. It's all the same with this. So on the flip side, we have this wonderful equality, nonviolence wheel. So I'm going to start in the same place of where the male privilege was and just go in the same order here. So we have economic partnership, so making money decisions together, making sure both partners benefit from financial arrangements. So whatever arrangement you got going on, I personally argue everyone, if they're going to have a joint account or not, everyone should have money in their own name, right? They should have a big account in their own name. Even if it's somebody's, only one person is working, okay, well then when you get paid and things are paid off, the money that they're supposed to have gets sent to them in their bank account, right? So you have your money, they have their money. If you have a joint account, then there is also that joint account, right? If you don't navigate with banks, because apparently there's still people that don't trust banks, then that equal access. This is the same thing, just apply with physical cash. Negotiation and fairness. So we're seeking mutually satisfying resolutions to conflict and accepting changes and being willing to compromise. So that's a huge one. If you're not willing to compromise with something, that's it. Like, that's your deal breaker. Like, if you're not able to compromise with that, and they're not able to compromise with you on that, it's a deal breaker. So another thing here is also knowing when something actually is like an ultimatum. This is something you absolutely will not compromise on, and also kind of reflecting as well as something realistically we should do before getting into relationships anyways, understanding what we would and would not compromise on. But no matter how much we speculate through life, we don't know what's going to be thrown at us, and it is impossible to educate ourselves on every aspect of every little thing and possible scenario that you can face in the future and how you should face that. And even then, just knowing doesn't actually even decrease your likelihood of something happening to you. It just helps better educate you on what to do when it does happen. So it's definitely frustrating with that aspect. But another part is going to be the non-threatening behavior, talking and acting to that she feels safe and comfortable expressing herself and doing things. So clearly just basic respect. You just have basic respect for somebody. You're gonna let them talk when they're talking, and if they're doing something, you're not gonna demean or belittle them just by doing something. Like, even down to like little things, like the unnecessary comments. Just be genuinely okay, I guess. Be a decent human being, have some respect. And the next one actually ironically is respect. So listening to her non-judgmentally, being emotionally affirming and understanding, and valuing her opinions. I generally don't understand why some people will get into a relationship with someone and they have absolutely no value to their partner's opinion. That one really, I really don't understand that. Like, if you don't like someone's opinions on, where do you draw the line at that point, really? Are you dating just to date at that point? Because that's what it feels like. Which, there's nothing wrong with that. Some people, that's how they figure out what they like and what they don't like and everything else. But at the same time, once you realize you don't value someone's opinions, I feel like that's a really good way to say that your personalities are just not compatible. So the next one is going to be trust and support. So we're supporting her goals in life. We're respecting her rights to have her own feelings, friends, activities, and opinions. So, and again, all this goes with men. This goes with every human being. Okay. Trust and support. It's pretty self-explanatory. I really feel like you need to be able to trust people I mean, we should all be able to have some trust in a sense that if something were to happen to us, there's going to be somebody out there that's going to try and help us, you know? And we should also, I argue, be able to trust the people closest of us to be able to do that. It's a huge alarm when somebody you trust is unwilling to help you, especially if they have every single opportunity in the world to be able to help you. At that point, they're making an absolute decision. There's definitely situations where people, they want to help and they just can't, and it's unfortunate, but people who truly can't are going to tell you that they can't. They're going to still be able to acknowledge that you need help as well. So then you have honesty and accountability. Accepting responsibility for self, acknowledging past use of violence, admitting being wrong, and communicating openly and truthfully. So this one is an interesting one for me in a sense that I personally will absolutely never be with anybody that has, in a sense, put their hands on me. That's a line that and boundary that I have. Other forms of violence, of emotional and mental, I think I can work out if I'm married to them and I go through counseling and they go through counseling and then we go through counseling together type thing. That's the only way I can personally feel like I can make that work as myself. But there are definitely people that have been able to have successful relationships where their DV was mostly emotional abuse, or maybe even just financial abuse, and there was just a disagreement. Maybe there was a difference between how both parties were raised and how they had an understanding of how financials, like, there are certain situations where people can feel comfortable going back into a relationship where DV has existed. But overall, I would encourage that to not be a thing unless, as I said before, like, you're in counseling, the other person's in counseling, and then you have a counselor together. The reason I don't encourage a counseling just for the couplings counseling is just because statistically it just doesn't work alone. And secondly, one of the reasons why is because often people will have a perception because they don't have another type of outlet to express themselves about this process. Where they feel like maybe the person who's supposed to mediate is actually picking sides, whether it is true or not. This can hold resentment and prevent it from working. So really you want to have counseling for one party, counseling for the other party, and counseling together. And if it's a polyamorous relationship, counseling for each individual, and then all together, I guess. The next one is responsible parenting. This one is, and then that's another aspect too with parenting and having children involved, is the struggles of really having to face someone that traumatized you over and over and over again. Like, no matter what, from every single person I've talked to who's even older now, all their kids are grown and everything else, that have had to share custody with somebody who had abused them. You know, it never got easier. It was just something they legally had to do, and they did it, and it was hard. And it's not, I don't think, an answer anyone really wants to hear, but what I see constantly is, at the end of the day, it's the children usually understanding the whole story later on in life and having their own perspective, and usually still having a wonderful relationship with their parent. So that is the good thing there. But sharing parent responsibilities, being a positive, nonviolent role model for the children. And that even includes, like, not even yelling in front of kids, really. Like, fighting in front of kids, yelling in front of kids, making threats in front of children. All of these things, you know, being on the road and start driving a little bit violently to scare everybody. Like, Those would be examples of scaring children in there and what not to do. But yeah, you want to just, literally, honestly, my best advice is not say anything. Like, just not say anything about the other parent unless the kid talks about it. That's kind of my rule of what I do. I don't really talk about the other parent around my kids unless my kids are going to talk, which my son never has. It's not something he's even able to question to me about. He's 2 next month. And then my daughter, she turns 3. She asks a bunch of questions, and I love it. She's just like me with all of that. She's got to know everything. She's got to understand why. She's always asking why. And it's interesting looking at them about all these things, but just unless they say something, really, and then just keep it literally to the question. And I'm also the type of person where if it's not an emergent question, it doesn't need an emergent answer. So you can give yourself, give your child an answer as like a little bit of an appetizer until you're able to give them the entree with it. Be like, oh, I don't know if I can answer, or just say, not, I don't know, but we can talk about that in a little bit later tonight. You know, and give yourself some time to think, give yourself time to reflect how to answer this question in an age-appropriate way. Like, we don't have to immediately answer everything. And I think especially with everything at our fingertips, we're under the impression that we have to know anything and everything at all given times. And in reality, we all have a need to process information, a need time to digest things, let things sit and resonate with us, and to actually understand things. So we don't always have to just jump in to answering our children's questions. So I feel like really the biggest way there is truly just don't talk about the other parent if you're having to co-parent with your ex-abuser. And then the last one, with shared responsibility, mutually agreeing on a fair distribution of work and making family decisions together. That's really a no-brainer. And nothing is going to ever be like a true 50-50 or you give 100, they give 100. That doesn't work. What works time and time again, you see so many people who are old and they still are with the love of their life, their high school sweethearts. It's because they were able to learn throughout time that some days they're going to have 30, the other person's going to have 70. Another day, this person's going to have 85, the other person's going to have 15. And then some days this person only got 20, this person's only got 20, and now you got to work together to figure out how you're going to be able to make up that 60. And what y'all can take off the list of duties, list of responsibilities, different ways to whatever it is that is affecting the situation. Maybe it's, you know, y'all are both sick that day and y'all usually every single day make sure the house is clean. Y'all have a big home. Y'all have dogs. Y'all are taking care of the dogs. So maybe today y'all just let the dishes pile up, and that's how y'all are able to give away, take off some of those things, so that way y'all give yourself some grace and y'all can take care of it when you're not sick. You know, being able to prioritize with each other, being able to take a less of a load off of each other, and being able to apply equity as well, which is really what a lot of this is as well, because in order to get to equality, we got to recognize where we're unequal, apply equity, put us back onto the same foundations, same pedestals, and then we can go into equality. So my issue mostly with the scary part about DV relationships, and anybody that wants to continue and go back into a relationship with somebody that has previously abused them, I honestly feel like once you get to the point you're at a shelter, how hard it is just to get to that point to making that decision inside, that alone, in my opinion, is enough that you should never go back. But there are definitely situations where I am wrong in that, and that maybe it was just the financial thing, and this was the last thing that they needed to try in order to knock some sense into the other person. And so I can understand, but for the vast majority, I would argue that the goal should just be stay away as much as possible. I really hope that this video was enjoyable overall, though. I had a lot of comments in my last section about the buns that I had. I tried to do that yesterday and today in order to film this video, and my hair does not like me. It will not keep any teasing right now, no matter how much hairspray I'm using. I'm using crap ton of hairspray. I feel bad. It's not working today. That's just how my hair is. Actually, it doesn't even like want to hold a curl. In order to get to like this was already a lot of work. So it's a little frustrating, my hair is. I don't have a lot of good texture with my hair. A lot of it has to deal with the fact that I lost a lot of nutrition in my body after experiencing 2 pregnancies with hypermesis gravidarum, as well as gallbladder issues about, I think it began maybe 6 or 7 months after I had my son. And so for the last 4 years, I've been having so much nausea, vomiting, hospital visits from all of these things. I've lost a ton of muscle and everything else. It's awful, but I'm better now. I had surgery. In fact, I recorded the last video just a couple, I want to say like 5 days after I had surgery, 4 days after I had surgery. I feel a lot better now. I can eat. I can definitely eat. So I'm very happy about that. I actually started hating food because you get to the point where you're vomiting so much, eventually you're eroding away your esophagus. And that paints a pretty picture in the toilet, to put lightly. So I'm so happy I'm done with the vomiting. I'm so happy that my organs are able to be healing and everything else. So it's been about almost 2 weeks since I've had surgery. So I hope that overall this video finds the audience it needs to find. It seems like my last video did exactly just do that. I'm very grateful for all the comments that I got and being able to engage with everybody. Lots of interesting conversations, different perspectives, things that I didn't even consider as well. So if there's anything that you want to add to the conversation, definitely also leave a comment and talk about it. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say. I have a couple more songs planned already, but I do want to add some filler, I guess, to my content. To make this a bit more digestible, I want to add a little bit more lighthearted videos, but I'm a little bit stumped on ideas. Somebody had asked about the hair tutorials for the puffballs, and I think once my hair is willing to work with me on that, I will do a tutorial on that. But if there's any other recommendations you guys would like for me that are not as traumatic to talk about, I guess, then please leave those suggestions down below as well. And with that, thank you all and have a great night.